Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond with your host Robin Hayhurst. In this podcast, Robin will introduce guests that have known failure and want to share their story about how they got through it and what happened next. This will make you learn how to see things from a new perspective and avoid making the same mistakes. Please welcome Robin Hayhurst.
Hello everybody and welcome to Bust and Beyond podcast. I'm joined today by Phill Berg. Now, Phill he thinks himself as the partner that you never thought you could afford but needed. So he coaches and mentors like myself, and he's got a wealth of knowledge that I'm sure we're going to hear about. Hello, Phill.
How are you, Robin? Thanks for inviting me today.
So we're here to kind of talk about the theme, which is, how failure is part of success, really. That's kind of the way I look at it. Firstly, what's your background? Kind of where did you start out?
So it's interesting related to the subject of failure, really. So my main career really was a 32-year carpet and flooring career. And I had retail outlets. And people often say to me, how did you end up in the carpet and flooring business? And I use the word failure in my actual answer. And it's literally as it was. And I went, because I failed at football. And they were like, what? And fact, I was pretty good when I was younger. The older I get, the better I used to be. But I was pretty good when I was younger. I was spotted very early and I was taken to, actually, as we record this, the team that are at the top of the Premier League at the moment, which is Tottenham Hotspur. I'm going to enjoy this moment just for a week or two, if I may. But I was invited to go for trials there and I ended up playing there for 2 years as attempted to become a professional. I got to an apprentice level. I then got released and there was my first kind of, oh my God, I'm not good enough. So I got released, but I got invited at the same time, which I didn't realise this goes on, to QPR, Queen's Park Rangers, where I played there for a year. And at Spurs, I was not very good. I'll actually say that. I was overawed. My parents weren't into sport, so they dropped me off and kind of picked me up. And if it was a kind of, how did it go? If I explained it, it went in one ear out the other. So kind of failure or rejection has been all around me, really, most of my life from that point of view. And I was working part-time in a carpet and flooring company at that time until I became a professional footballer. And the reality was I got released, mucked about at school because I genuinely thought I'd be a footballer. No one told me I would be, by the way, but I believed I might be. And therefore, I stayed in the carpet and flooring business. So 32-year carpet and flooring revolved around sales, was the career that was my main career at the age I am, purely and simply because I didn't make the grade at football. But, all of those parts of our beginning life, from my experience, leading on to even what I do now, which is crazy compared to being a carpet and flooring salesperson, I just believe it's all part of a journey.
Yeah, I've just watched the Beckham documentary on Netflix, which I really enjoyed, actually, because I don't follow football particularly well. Actually, I used to, as a kid, because my neighbour had 2 tickets for Spurs and 2 daughters, but every game he took me to see, we lost. So I kind of gave up on that. I thought, why would you do that? So I blame Spurs for me not following football, really.
Yeah, well, that's all right. You haven't suffered too much because it's been painful following it. So you've been all right. You've done okay. But yeah, that was the journey, really. It was through, I'm sure we'll talk about the definition of failure, but through what I saw was a failure, turned into what do I do next? And I think it creates the platform for who you become, I think.
Yeah, I think it's all about learning. What did you take from your failure to become a footballer? Looking at the Beckham documentary, he was so focused. That's his life. His life was football. That was it, know. But his father was really his driving force. And if you didn't have parents who were into football, did you have that focus?
I may have done, but I would say when you're young, it wasn't drawn out of me. So it was kind of why I said, and I don't blame, there's no book on being parents. My parents did the best, whether good, bad or indifferent, they did their best. So there was no driving force. For example, we trained twice a week at White Hart Lane, at the ground actually. In the summer, we trained at a place called Cheshunt, which was the original training area. But we trained twice a week at White Hart Lane. And the relevance of that why I'm telling you that is because I used to get 2 buses straight from school, 3 buses, I think it was, and we got paid expenses. So when I say paid expenses, I was 16, got 3 buses, for whatever, 50p, whatever it was 40 odd years ago. And I told them I got a train for £1.50. And on the way home, I bought chicken and chips completely free of charge. So realistically, I was never going to be a footballer. But I never had anyone, relating to what you just said, I never had anyone say, like, what are you doing? What are you playing at? I never had anyone that put me right. So I had desire, but I wasn't pushed. I wasn't challenged, which, funny enough, it's the first time actually in my life that I've actually just connected what I've just said to you to what I do now, because I do mentor and work with business owners who we need challenging. So actually that word's just, for the first time ever, probably has repeated itself after 40 years, because I had it in me. I honestly believe even to today, when I was playing at Spurs, I wasn't good enough, definitely wasn't good enough. I was looking at the stadium all the time, walking in through the front doors thinking like, wow, one day, but no one kind of went, you're not there yet. No one actually pulled me back. Never an arrogance. There was a belief that I thought I was good enough. I wasn't. I didn't have the right attitude. I wasn't arrogant. I actually just thought, well, I'm here now. No one actually said this is the beginning of your journey. I actually didn't know, and I thought it was the end of my journey.
Ignorance, not arrogance.
Totally. There wouldn't be an ounce of arrogance. There wouldn't be an ounce of arrogance.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you talk about parents and parents' influence. I mean, my father was, his hobby, he always said his hobby was his job.
Yeah.
And I think I'm exactly the same place. And I used to think I was quite lazy. I still do actually sometimes. If I'm enjoying something, it's not work. So it's like, I'm not really associating this with working, so therefore I'm not working, therefore I must be lazy.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you have a partner at home, she says you're not working. I bet you she doesn't. She says you're working too hard, right?
I'm not going to comment because she may one day listen to this.
Well, there's the point, because, I always turn around and say, when we have a discussion on our own, we justify everything. So if you ask my wife, okay, is he a workaholic, at the same time as asking me, my no comes out at the same time as her yeah. And I actually kind of get angry with it, because I say to her, I'm absolutely not a workaholic. My definition of a workaholic is you choose to work every hour of every day when you don't have to. I will work as many hours as I choose to do because I can and I want to. I actually have realized that I actually like being busy, because an alternative, not the alternative, an alternative to being busy is not being busy. And then how would that day look? Every single day of every single week, every single year. So I actually quite like being busy. But I think the reality was I believed I was good enough. When I got taken to Queen's Park Rangers at Spurs, I was with two friends. And I'm not going to say we mucked about. We just didn't have that father figure influencing us or whatever. We weren't held down, if you like. At Queen's Park Rangers, it was just me that went there without my two friends. And that was a question of, okay, just knuckle down. I did play very good football, and I played with players that made it, and I genuinely at that club thought I was better than. But, you learn about decision makers versus what you think of yourself. And growing up, I learned that a decision maker and their belief is far more important than what I think if they're the decision maker. So for me, it was a question of facing adversity. I lived my life with choice. And that's what I would say to our audience here, that choice was at the time. I failed at Queen's Park Rangers. They told me to go and play what was Isthmian League. That's different now, probably conference. And kind of contact them again in 2 years' time, and they'll come and have another look at me. At that stage in my life, I was thinking, well, 19 now, need to start earning money. I was already working now kind of in the carpet and flooring shop, and I need to kind of be thinking ahead if football's not going to be my career. I didn't have that person that said, it could be. It could be. I have no regrets, because what I don't know, I don't know. But yeah, the drive is always in most of us, I think. But, if you have to do that 100th push-up on your own after done 99, do you have the ability or the desire or the need to do the 100th? Or just the fact there's a trainer there saying, come on, one more. My attitude has always been, oh, you so-and-so, which I'm obviously tailoring my words. But, I've been trained by some very, very decent people, and they get the best out of me when I'm challenged. It's like, is that it? Is that all you can do? And my attitude was always, no, well, I'll show you. But they learned how to get the best out of me. I wasn't pushed like that when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, my father was very successful, and that breeds problems, I can tell you. I can't remember him pushing me. He didn't want to push me into a career, so he didn't want me necessarily to. I think he wanted me to come into the building industry, but he didn't kind of encourage me openly.
Yeah.
You know, could try better, or that kind of thing. So I didn't have that kind of drive, but I did have a drive that if someone said you can't do that, bloody hell, then everything changed. You know, I would make sure I could do that. And that's kind of pushed me throughout my life. You know, if people say, well, that's impossible, or you won't be able to do that, I get it done. So
have you ever asked yourself why are you like that? Because I truly believe we are who we are, all of us, by choice, related to whatever happened in our past. And there's something deep, and I'm sounding very deep here, and generally I'm not that kind of person, but I know why I am like I am. I need reaffirmation all the time. I need, when I add value to somebody and they say it, part of me is like, wow, really? But the other part is kind of, wow, like, really? Seriously, I've done that?
Well, it's it's an NLP approach, isn't it? It's about, your past. And I mean, I think I have kind of delved into this a little bit. But I mean, my kind of early memories was playing football. I loved playing football. I wasn't very good. I really wasn't very good. I had all the kind of the football kind of guys who were kind of top of the school and really good. And I just loved playing. So I kind of never got picked. Do you know what I mean? On the field. And there's a lot of rejection around that. So I had to learn to enjoy just taking part. My wins was a good tackle,
being in perspective,
or, a good pass, not scoring a goal. I've scored very few goals. So it just kind of, I think that specifically changed my perspective. Yeah. And I didn't have a father that was into football, or a mother, like yourself, they weren't into sport in any way. And I had no ambition of becoming a football player, but I really enjoyed it. And I think that's part of the problem with me watching football, is I actually would rather be out there playing it, and I'm not good enough. So, and I think it's the same with most sports, actually. I love playing team sports. I love, and I took up in my 30s when I took up running. And because that was against me, that was perfect. Yeah. I could push me as hard as I could, push me. So that was quite good. And I wouldn't be letting my team down, for falling over the ball.
Yeah, there's a bit of imposter syndrome, isn't it? Just in that words. I bet none of your teammates said you let them down. I mean, the reality is there's going to be someone that scores lots of goals. There's going to be someone that defends well, which that was my position. And there's always going to be the engine of the thing. I wasn't a runner. I could. Squash was a very big game of mine, and I could run on the squash court hours, as long as the longest distance I ran was like 5 or 6 meters. But I could do 5 or 6 meters back front all day long. But run around a pitch. No thanks.
Yeah, I remember a particular thing at school. I kind of swapped schools a bit, and I just got into kind of running a little bit just around the garden, but we had a rather large garden, I'll just point that out.
Nice.
But it made a big difference, and suddenly I kind of came from kind of not keeping up with anybody to actually leading. And there was a few very surprised faces when I think I came 3rd or 2nd in the cross country. From last, just because I hadn't been training even. Something had got me going, and I'd kind of been running 2 or 3 times a week. I was 12, 13, so I wasn't kind of, But what kind of absolutely stopped my running career, which never really started, was I then got onto the athletics team because of that performance. And I thought, right, okay, so I went out thinking that, those couple of training sessions a week were going to make a big difference to me. And went off on the 1,500 metres with someone who ran for Hertfordshire, and he lapped me. And I was running what I thought was really fast.
Yeah.
and that was me done. That's like, there's no way I could catch him.
There's something related in business on that, though.
That
just reminds me of my story, because you said he lapped me and I was done. What I see in that is who was there for you at that moment. Someone's got to win, someone's got to come second, someone's got to come third. But in theory, it shouldn't have been the end of your pleasure it shouldn't. It needed someone around you to kind of get you back into perspective. What are you doing this for? My terrible game at the moment is golf. And I was, and I was a decent golfer. And before whoever listens to this kind of hears me turn around and think, God, is this guy bad at anything? Yeah, everything you don't hear me talk about. And that's a fact. Anything you don't hear me talk about, I was bad at, because if I was bad at something, I didn't actually carry on doing it. I just wasn't an ego thing. I just didn't enjoy being bad at something. So I was a decent golfer 8-10 years ago. For whatever reasons, excuses, I stopped playing for 3 or 4 years. Genuine reasons, but excuses still work, etc., etc. Change of career, focus, blah, blah, blah. I started playing golf again in the last 2 to 3 years, and I'm really, at this moment, 50-50 whether I carry on or not. And if ever I've been thinking about my attitude, my determination, my desire, in fairness, had I not have played golf years ago, I would have definitely given it up now, because I'd have just thought, it's not for me. But there is something in who we are that makes us who we are. And I am really as bad as you could see on a golf course, embarrassingly. And yet I hit that 1 or 2 shots and it's in there, and I am determined to get back. But I will go out in the rain and stand on the practice ground for an hour or two, whereas someone else will turn around and say, well, it's raining. And I think that comes down to who we are, what we are, our desire, I think.
I think so. I think it's that focus. How to be in the top 1% of the country at doing something is to do what the other 99% aren't willing to do, which is really, really concentrate on what you're doing. Going back to running, I did carry on running after that, but I ran against me.
Yeah, well, that's good competition.
And that was good competition. And, there's a saying that I love, which, if you try and be better than the person in the mirror, watch everyone else kind of fall at the wayside.
Nice. Yeah, very nice.
It's very, very true. And having that consistency in anything. So sport is a great kind of leveler, and it's a great comparison to business.
Yeah, I think so. I think so based on my own experience, not being an expert, but I relate everything I do to sport. Teamwork gets you learning about different personalities. How do you deal with the ego in the room? How do you deal with someone that could achieve better results, but they lack confidence? Are you a captain type person? I've always generally, I think this could come across as an arrogance, but there's a difference between a fact and a boast. And I've always generally been a captain type person, because you mentioned being in the top 1%. Please don't get me wrong, because I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting. I have no desire to be in the top 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever. But I have the same thought as you, just said differently. I have every desire. I've got to be the best I can be in anything I do. It's just got to be the best I can be. But that applies to people I work with, people I care about. They've got to be the best they can be. And I've always been that type of character that, as I was a decent footballer, I tended to be one of the better players in our local team. And because I understood that, I took that responsibility of bringing people on that felt they couldn't do it, but I knew they could. I just knew they could. And I used to get real, like you said, that tackle, that hit, seeing someone do that and then catch my face and they're like, I did it. And I'm going, you did. I mean, that for me is like, you can't pay for that. So I'm with you. And I think for me, sport it's given me a very, very good platform. And I'm not putting it all down sport, but I believe most things start with desire. And if you want to do something, you've got to understand your why. Too many people try and do something to get their fathers to say, I'm proud of your son. And the father never will anyway. Too many people do something because they feel they have a need to do it. But I feel from my own experience, not a lot of people do something understanding the why they're doing it.
No, and that is the driving point, isn't it? I mean, your why is so important, because if you haven't got that focus, and I always say, that focus is really important, but that does ebb and flow. However strong your why is, consistency is just getting up in the morning and doing it anyway.
Yes.
And I think that's where the kind of the comparison to sport is concerned, you can't go out running once a month and expect to but if you get up even when you don't want to and go out and do that training, you'll do it.
Yeah.
Running the business is exactly the same. And that's what I see in lots of business owners. They kind of have a session, or they kind of get kind of really fired up about their why and kind of moving forward. They're kind of, they're not consistent in it. And I suffer from that. If I suffer from that, everyone suffers from it. It's one of those things. It's trying to be consistent to make sure you have that consistency in what you do. I would say run the business, or particularly, getting leads or marketing, which is, I know you're an expert at, but a really large dam that you're filling up with water, but you can't see inside the dam. Yeah, so you're doing all the right things and you're filling up the water, and you're not going to get any leads until it trickles over the top. And 2 inches before it trickles over the top, because you can't see it, that was a waste of time. And that is where failure happens in business, not because people necessarily do the wrong thing, though that does happen. It's because they stop doing the right thing too early because they haven't got the results.
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm very well known for one-liners. They're called Bergisms, not from me, by the way. They got given a name, #Bergisms. It's actually my 3rd book coming up, where I didn't realise I've got 290 odd one-liners, and I didn't realise, and some of them are very motivational and a simple one-liner, some of them need a bit of explanation, but I always turn around and say, don't run the 100-metre race and stop at 99 metres, because you've made all that effort. I might as well stay on the starting line thinking I'm not going to get there anyway and enjoy the sun. So people do quit, and I find this from experience. People quit on something that works because they haven't quite made it work yet. It's not the thing they're doing that doesn't work. It's just they haven't made it work yet. And this is where my belief comes in. And I've only thought about this myself in my own life for the last 4 or 5 years. You said about yourself sometimes being a bit inconsistent or just stopping there or whatever. I believe everybody should have some sort of coach, accountability partner, someone they just talk to each month. And I believe that with a passion, but let me rephrase that. Not that I didn't believe it, I just didn't think of it. Most of us, we exist in our life, we make the same mistakes as our predecessors, we learn from those mistakes, whether costly or not, and on we go. And why don't we just find somebody that's been in our industry 40 years longer than us, who would happily sit down with you and say, these are the mistakes I made, these were the good things, and then we don't have to copy all those mistakes all the time. But most of us don't do that. And I find from mine, I search people that have got more experience than me, but I took on someone that I value, because you said you're a coach, I'm a coach, whatever. I actually don't care what we're called. I don't actually call myself a coach. On my own title, my own signature, I think I've got coach, consultant, mentor. And someone once said to me, what's the difference between all three? And I said, I have no idea at all. But at least if I put them all on there, there's a chance you'll speak to me about one of them. The bottom line is I can tell you what I do, and that's what you're interested in. You're not interested in what I'm called. And I just passionately believe that those of us that, when I say want success, what I've learned is people haven't even defined it. We all need money to live. That's just a fact. But it's amazing how many people have a goal for more money, but have no idea if they had that money, what they do with it. I've seen people become ill striving for more money than they actually needed for what they wanted the money for. So I just got it in my life. I've had it for the last 3.5 years. I speak to the guy every single month for an hour, talk to him about what I'm doing, talk to him about just thoughts I've got, talk to him about concerns. He's a real confidant. And I would say on 8 of the 12 calls a year, there's something that he'll just put and I'll go, that's clever. Why should we have doubts longer than necessary when we're on our own? I just believe we all need that.
I think it's really lonely running the business. And when I speak to, I was there, but when I speak to people, they can't tell their wives because often it's not a male-female thing. They're just not involved in the business normally. Okay, so they don't really understand the day-to-days and what it means and the personalities and everything else. They can't really tell anyone that they employ because that's kind of undermining what they're doing. And their friends are a bit bored of it. So, they either could be a little bit jealous of them because they seem to be succeeding in business. Remember, businesses always look better from the outside than they do from the inside.
Yes, perception and illusion. Yeah.
Or they're just not interested, not in a horrible way. They're interested in their well-being, but, they're not interested in the nitty-gritty stuff that someone wants to talk about. So isn't it absolutely paramount that you have someone to talk about that kind of stuff, someone who's been there, that understands it?
I believe so. I truly believe so. More so in the last 4 years, Robin. For my own life, I can't sit here and go, oh, why didn't I do this earlier? Because I don't do that type of thinking, because I didn't do it earlier. But I do sit there and think, well, it'd be interesting if I did have that earlier, father figure, whatever. But, I remember the biggest financial knock I ever had in my flooring business was from our absolute best client, bar none. It was a lady that was a property developer, and honestly, we could even phone her and say, well, cash flow is a little bit tough at the moment, and she didn't even have any orders placed with us at that moment. I could literally phone her and say, cash flow is a little bit challenging at the moment. And she'd say, would you like me to put some money in your bank? Knowing that she's going to order X amount with us over the next year or so. So this lady was absolutely what we thought was amazing. And then I had one of the biggest lessons I ever learned. And it wasn't my eggs were in one basket. We had many clients, but she was the biggest and the best by far. And then one Christmas, owing us a lot of money, you'll know what's coming here, she disappeared, literally owing us a lot of money, which we weren't worried about because we've been dealing with her for 6 or 7 years. And I remember driving into Knightsbridge, where her offices were, very nice prestige offices. And literally, I was able to see through the window. There wasn't a desk in sight. It had been cleared out. And I remember coming home. And it was potentially losing business type money owed. And my wife obviously knew about it. And she, well, and I said, oh, she's gone. I said, she's gone. I said, we've been done. I absolutely don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And Jackie turned around, and I don't knock her for this at all. She turned around and, oh dear. She said, what do you want for supper? I've told this story a million times. And my answer, I think it was about 50 odd, £55,000. I'm going back 30 odd years. So she said, what do you want for supper? And I went, what do I want for supper? What do I want for supper? How about £55,000? And Jackie still kind of went, no, I understand that, but you've got to eat.
Yeah, and in some ways, she was bringing you down to earth and just getting on with life, because you have to get over these things. It is difficult, and I make this whole podcast has come about because I failed in business at one point in 2015, and it was a lot of money, and it was really scary to go through. And I really feel for anyone who's going through that. And however much they played a part in their own downfall, you've got to feel sorry for them. And they deserve some help and support and everything else. And I was lucky. That I had help and support. I had even had people that were talking about, putting money in, but it just wasn't, I couldn't see a way through it for that. And I wasn't going to make the situation worse. So, I made a decision that we couldn't. And it was a very difficult situation. But wow, the stress around that was unbelievable. And you literally can't sleep. You feel sick all the time until you learn to concentrate on getting through it. And we used to rent offices. So we used to rent out offices. So we had our own offices that we owned. And a lot of them were, they did have loans against them for the bank at the time. But we saw quite a few companies appear. The directors all got Range Rovers, and they bought like these seating which are £1,000 a seat, and big expense. And then 5-6 months later, no one would turn up. Staff would turn up, boss wouldn't turn up. They hadn't paid the rent for that month. Everyone disappeared, and no one would see the boss again. They'd just disappear. So all the staff walking around going, what are we going to do? We haven't been paid. Who's going to close the company down? And, people literally just did a runner. And that's
some bad people out there. Yeah. Some very bad people.
Well, you say that. If I could have got onto a flight to the other end of the world, never come back, I would have loved that. But I couldn't, and I didn't. And I'm too invested in the area I work in. I'm too invested in the place and the people and my family and everything else. So it wasn't an option, but I do understand people doing it. I'm not saying I condone it, but I understand the pressure and how difficult it is to actually do the day-to-day of dealing with people saying, I've let you down or it's gone wrong.
Yeah, I can accept that. I just think the way I'm making and I appreciate it sounds like a judgment. I totally accept that. I just think in all of us, there are different type of personalities and different values. And my values, and I believe I'm very proud of myself with what I'm about to say. I believe I'm a very good communicator. That doesn't mean, I communicate excellently from the other person's point of view. But, if I was that bad, who am I letting down? I mean, when I say who am I letting down, tough decisions have to be made in business. Tough decisions have to be made, and that's a good thing. But I do believe that tough decisions can be made, but you communicate with your team, and you can't control their reaction to whether they like what you say or not. But you can control. I'm not saying this to you, Robin. I'm just saying it to general. I'm a great believer of, I've had to have some very honest conversations. I got turned over by a business partner for a lot of money when I was in my late 20s. And he left the country. And I was solely liable for him and his father's family business that had been established for 65 years. I wasn't even part of the family, but I'd signed an unlimited guarantee against the business, thinking I was signing shares and becoming a managing director. I trusted the guy. It was like family. And the reality for me was it was the lack of communication and the lack of honesty that hurt me and made me resentful. Now, the fact is, had he have said, hey, listen, this is the situation, not with turning me over, that's a horrible person, but, had situations have happened and, been honest, in that moment, you kind of think whatever you think, but over time, you appreciate and respect being respected, having the courtesy of a conversation. So I'm not judging, and I hear what you're saying. We can't judge. People have different demons in their life. We can't judge. But I'm a massive believer of communication, like huge.
I think. I remember a guy. There's a lot of nastiness around us going bust because lots of rumours started flying.
Yes.
About we'd take the money out and we'd done the opposite, put money in.
Yeah.
And people just like to stir up. And you had quite a few threats and people threatening to threaten and people saying that they had stuff on me that, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know what it is, but, maybe they have got stuff on me. I don't know, and all this kind of stuff. And in amongst this printer that we've been using for quite a few years, I think he was owed about 300 quid. And I met him at a thing 6 months later. He said, I was just very disappointed that no one bothered to phone us up and tell us, And I thought, yeah, I get that. But do you know what? I was struggling to function.
Absolutely.
I was dealing with people that were owed 100 grand, which I couldn't let that carry on because they would gone bust. So I was trying to do deals, which, let's be honest, they might not have been as clear cut as they could have been. To make sure that these people were getting some money and getting paid. And this guy's owed 350 quid or whatever it was, and he's fed up because I didn't phone him. But that's the honesty bit, isn't it? Honesty is a double-edged sword. It's great to say we're very honest, but honesty is about telling people things you don't want to tell them as well.
100%. I think I give him right. But the difference is I give him right without blaming you. There's the difference. I give him 100% right, but without blame, because he's talking about him not understanding or accepting where you were. Just because I've got the balls to phone you up and say, look, I'm really sorry, I'm just going to let you know what's about to happen, doesn't mean I should expect everyone else has the same cojones as I do. Everyone differs. But in the moment, emotion is far more powerful than logic. People have fights and arguments on emotion, not on logic. Where does logic come into let's smash each other to pieces? So emotion affects decision making a lot more than logic. And what I've learned through my business career is when I take emotion away from logic, when I take emotion out of a decision, out of a situation, I can talk easily. I've got 2 clients at the moment that owe me money. One of them took me on and should never have taken me on. And I've been very good to him. And I've said to him, and what I've learned around communication, and it's something I abide by, is I didn't know this until I had to deliver a presentation about communication. And I didn't realize, but I actually have values in my communication. So, we've all got, there's an old saying, you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family. So I'm sure in most of our situations, especially with the older brother, the older sister, you might have to have some uncomfortable situations, get a conversation with your family, whatever. And I've learned in my life that I cannot control the other person's reaction. I can literally only control how I deliver. So I have 4 values, and this isn't telling your audience, this is what you must do. I just realized it's with me. I will always be open. So if I've got something to say, you won't get half of it, you'll get all of it. And I'll be very open. That doesn't allow me to be rude. I'll be open. You won't need to read between the lines. I will be very honest. It's genuinely how I'm feeling, or it's genuinely what I'm seeing. It's my opinion. I'll be very honest. I'll be very sincere. And I challenged myself when I did these values, because I thought, well, is sincere very similar to honest? But actually, the way I want to define it, my sincerity is, if I have to have an uncomfortable conversation with you, it's with good intent. So the way I'm defining sincere in that values is it's with good purpose. Like, I need to tell you this because, or we need to speak about this because this is the outcome I'd ideally like. So sincere means it's with a good purpose. It's not, if you're behaving badly, I don't have a purpose of calling you an idiot and your behavior is disgusting. It's with a view, by talking to you about how I feel you're behaving. If you value it, then you're going to come out of it a better person. So you can either be an idiot afterwards and go, that's the way I behave, hard luck. Okay, well, then I am trying to help an idiot. Or it's like, look, I really appreciate you telling me this, Phil, because no one else has. So it's actually with good intent. And my final one, which is so critical, is deliver with respect. Communicate with respect. So if I have an issue, I grew up in a very shouting family. I grew up in a very conflicting family. So, my lot could argue in a post box on their own. They say telephone box on their own. Though to some of our audience, they won't know what a telephone box is. But, it really is a question of, for me, as long as I can speak with respect to the person I'm speaking to, then I can't control their reaction. But I will always communicate 1,000,000%.
Yeah. I mean, communication is really so important. And just something you said there triggered me on the fact that you brought up a point earlier about watching people succeed, encouraging people to succeed.
Yeah.
Because I think you were talking about sincerity, and I think that's so important around that. And I've worked out lots of stuff in the last 5-6 years. That is one of my greatest pleasures in life.
Nice.
I almost to a selfish point. I love it so much. I've always been, I think I've always been a giver. I'm always disappointed if anyone gets me anything, because it's never quite what I had in mind. But I love giving. And my wife says I'm terrible, because actually what I'll do is I won't buy her anything because I can't get her the thing I want to get her. That's that, because she says, why don't you just get me something? I said, well, yeah, but I wanted to get you that and I couldn't get that. So, and that's one of the things that she minds about. Not to bring her into this, just in case she listens one time. But anyway, to come into now this role that I've got now, which is mentoring, coaching, consulting, absolutely fits that fantastically. I get a buzz out of it. And I've always said, as far as, say, winning the lottery, I wouldn't want to win a really big figure on the lottery, because I don't think I'd know what to do with it, and I wouldn't be able to do what or perhaps I couldn't do what I'm doing now because I wouldn't need to. But I don't do this because I need to, so I do it because I want to. So if I won that kind of one that you get £10,000 a month, that'd be perfect for me. That means that, whatever happened, I could have a month off and be fine.
Yep.
But, I absolutely adore what I do, and adore getting out there and helping people. And it's surprising how people get the simple things wrong and just haven't got the vision.
Yeah, I'm writing some things
they haven't
down
got vision. They don't understand where they're going. So my kind of, as with everything, every client I have teaches me something. And I'll be honest and say some of the clients I have not served as well as I should do. But we're getting to a really good point now where we absolutely know what works and we can measure that. So, getting things right about giving up before you kind of, you get there, measuring something, KPIs, whatever, some kind of KPI is so important. So you're filling up that kind of big dam and you're measuring something. Measuring how much water is going in, for instance. Something that makes sense to you that you can measure. Yeah. And KPIs are just so important in everything. And I think that's one thing I missed in business. It was, I once went to a clairvoyant, and I didn't go to a clairvoyant. I'll just be clear on this. And if you believe or don't believe, there loads of different thoughts on this. If I really thought I'd go to a clairvoyant and speak to my dad, I would go tomorrow. But I happened to be at an event where a clairvoyant was sitting, and I happened to sit with her, and she happened to do a reading. So that's how it happened. And she said a few things that were a bit shocking. One, she identified my father's name as someone being really close to me, which I don't know how she would have known that. But, but the other thing she said, in your business, you are striving to be somewhere.
Yes.
And you're going to get there. You're going to get there as the position in the business. But when you get there, it will not be what you think it is. So at the time, I thought, when I'm MD of the business, that's it. I've got made it. And when I got there, I was so not prepared to do that job. And I kind of work with people now that are moving towards that in their business. And I'm trying to teach them all the stuff that I didn't know to get them prepared for it.
Well, that's who you are. And I love you for that. But I mean, it is beware of what you wish for. So there's a course I run and we spend the whole morning setting the goals. And then just before lunch, imagining you're in that position. And then 9 out of 10 people undo the goals within the first hour of the afternoon because it's actually not what they envisaged. And that's why I believe we all need that person that can capably not tell us, but just say, is that what you want? Why do you want that? So, for example, I mean, you said a few things there and I wrote them down. And, you said they don't understand where they'll be going, where they're going. I think that's most businesses. From my experience, most people I meet exist. And again, for our audience that are listening today, please don't think that's a criticism. If you're in that situation, at least what I'd like you to recognize is it's not the way to do it. And then sometimes some of our audience will even now be saying, it's okay for him to say that, but how do I change that? And I just believe you need someone else in your life. I just believe you need someone else saying, just the question of why. Why is it you're working? I mean, I love it. I remember I was invited to do a keynote speech on a big event in Lithuania a few years ago. And I was supporting a very famous speaker. So they weren't interested in me. In fact, so much so I walked on stage and I said, I know what you're thinking. You're all thinking, who the hell is this other speaker? It was the only way I could do it. And I said, okay, guys, I want to ask you. I said, I want you to just write down, why do you work? And I could feel the audience kind of going, God, is this it? I said, I know what you're thinking. You're all going to be sitting here thinking, that's a stupid question. I said, I know you've got to pay the mortgage. I know you've got to feed the kids. I know you've got to eat. I said, but is that it? I said, very few people are working with the view that in 2 to 3 years' time, and I do use that length period, 2 to 3 years' time, this is how my life will then look. Because they're not, like you said about my football, I wasn't pushed. Sometimes I can't picture, not me actually, because I do it, but sometimes people can't picture 2 or 3 years' time because they're so involved in the now. And I understand that more than most. But if the now never changes, then we're always in the now and nothing ever changes. So I'm a great believer of we've got to work out where we are now, and we've got to work in a way that what can we do to position ourselves so that in the next 2 to 3 years, life can be the next step forward. Okay. And whether we achieve it or not, bloody great fun going for it. And, I'm, and I'd love to just kind of say this message. You mentioned a couple of things. You failed in business. And as you said, you failed in business. I actually thought to myself, it's interesting when you hear it. So we failed in business. I don't know. Did you? Or you failed on that part of your journey or that part of your, do you see, why are we in business? If we think about it, I think when people separate business and life, then they make it I failed in business. We're in business. This will sound very mouthy, but I'm quite passionate on this. We're in business for life. So actually, the journey of that business route, which didn't work, has only been part of your life journey. So my definition of fail, or I've heard it somewhere, the definition of failure is when you stop trying to do what you originally planned to do. That's what I heard from someone was the definition of failure. I thought, I like that, because you were working at that time in your life, in whatever business, doesn't really matter, as part of your journey to earn income to live the life that you want. Well, you're still.
Well, I mean, I'd say to that, I absolutely, yes, my business failed, but I absolutely could not do what I'm doing now without the experience of that failure.
Definitely.
There's no way. It's most probably quadrupled the experience and the things I know to do right now.
I couldn't agree more.
Because not only did I have that experience, I then kind of really reviewed it, and the first year was everyone else's fault.
Yes.
But beyond that, I worked through it and reviewed it. A lot of the stuff I ask people to do and get people to do isn't stuff that I necessarily did. It's stuff that I should have done.
Yeah.
So, I actually look at other people who do what I do, who haven't failed, and think, you don't know the half of it.
I love that. I love speaking to you. I mean, there's you remind me of a famous Nelson Mandela quote, which, again, I wish I knew some of these things younger, but I didn't. And I love this quote. He said, I never, ever, ever lose. I either win or I learn. And mentally, which I go back to emotion now, mentally, stuff happens. Circumstances change, which we can't control. The reality is that success comes from dealing with it. And before anyone kind of sits there and goes, easy for him to say, they don't know me. It's not easy to do, but it's not complicated. How long do you mope around for? How long do you blame outside circumstances? So life has changed. You've lost your career. Hey ho, you haven't lost your life. And before, again, that sounds very kind of throwaway statement. When you get older, you do look back and think, what would have been the worst? Seriously, what would have been the worst? But at that time, the worst was terrible.
I again, totally agree. I mean, the thing about vision, which is so important, and I go through this with clients, and I've kind of read a few books on it, and I've kind of got my own take on it now. So I always ask them, where do they want to be in 5 years' time? And they start talking about the business. And I always stop them and go, whoa, right. No, what do you want in 5 years' time? So we really work out what they want and why in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
Then we look at the business and we say, right, what's the business going to look like to deliver that? And that's just not just money, it's time, it's, everything else. And we build the business in huge detail, structure, turnover, overheads. We build it on paper in huge, and then you kind of got, right, that's where I'm going. This is where I am. What's my steps? Are there any people in the company already that we could fit into that structure? Are there any people that we need to pick up along the way to fit into that structure? We might be looking for a project manager, but actually we're looking for an ops director. So is there a project manager we can take on that is going to grow with the business? Just that, there's a bit of free value for anybody listening. Just that is so life-changing. Just that little bit.
I think so. Look, I go back to kind of what we said before. I think everybody that's serious about living their life as best as possible needs someone in their life, even once a year, just to, what does next year look like? Why does it look like that? What needs to happen? And I'm a great believer. There's an exercise I do at the moment. We're recording this towards the end of 2023. There's an exercise I do with my clients at the moment. And I say to them, I want you to write these words. 2026 was a fantastic year because, and at this time of year, I'm kind of toyed between 2025 and 2026. So we're at the beginning of November 2024. 2023, sorry. And it feels very right to say 2026 was a fantastic year because, and you have to write the answers to that as if it were the 31st of December 2026. So you're not planning 2026. You're literally saying, this is what I did. I had this particular holiday that I've been talking about for never. I would say for never. I've had this particular holiday, which we did. I did half a day a week, work less. My weight was X, whatever. I started this sport that I've been saying for ages, whatever. I go out with my partner at home once every month now, which we never did, type of thing. You literally say, this is what 2026 happened. And by doing that, you can then look back at it and think, wow, do you know what? That would be realistic, but that would be a really, really nice year to have done that. Therefore, you now have 2 years where at the 1st of November near on, 2023, you therefore have 2 years now to plan that happening. And that's not long. It's long enough to plan. It's near enough that if you're slightly off schedule, you can get back on track. Because when people talk about 8-10 years' time, if they're nowhere near in the first 2 years, they don't stick to it because it's like, well, it doesn't matter. We've still got 8 years. So I work on everything as a life plan. I know what 2026 looks like for me, and I'm working on it now with a plan to make 2026 happen. And by the way, next year I do 2027, the year after I do 2028. So everything I do, business decision, is related to life plan, not business plan. Because most people from experience, they do a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, if they even do it. They never look at it again because it's too far away anyway. So my business plans are always 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And are they keeping me on track to how I want to live my life? But this has all come through, I don't want to call it failure. And I bless you, I really enjoy speaking to you. And I loved what you said before. But I think the way I look at it is, I felt it was failure at the time. Said my business partner bankrupted our business. He left the country. I've had people even to today, 35 years later, will accuse me of affecting their income years ago. My partner was on the financial side of the business. I didn't know anything about it. So I can't affect that. But I don't look back and think now it was failure. I just look back and think that was a bad moment, wasn't it? And it really has made whatever the future looked like, it made it.
Absolutely. I see that. And maybe failure is the wrong word. Maybe it's learning from challenges. Maybe it's learning from adversity. Failure is, we get hooked up on that. I think, lots of people you see in the public eye have failed in some part of their life or business. Richard Branson has, Alan Sugar has. Yeah. People don't tend to focus that, particularly in the UK. And I think because, they wouldn't call it failure. They would have learned something from it and moved on and made a lot of money somewhere else. So,
Maybe at the time, though, that's what, and you're making me think, but maybe at the time, and you know what? Failure is an emotion. That sounds, I made that sound very mouthy and I didn't mean it like that. But as I heard myself say it, I thought that sounds very simplistic. But seriously, what is failure? And if we pigeonhole it, why the hell am I working? And I'm working for the quality of life I still want to have. So I've never failed. The only time I'm going to fail is on my deathbed. Did I do it or didn't I do it? And it's the only time I think, because I can't carry on after that, I can say I failed or I didn't. Up till then, the routes I took just haven't worked.
Absolutely. The difference between someone who fails and someone who succeeds is getting up off the floor one more time. That's all it is. Then you actually fall over. And that's a great one. And I think, everything that happens to you in that way, in particularly in business, but it also is relevant to a lot in your personal life. But there are certain things in your personal life which I think perhaps won't be as helpful for you. But everything that happens to you makes you stronger. It makes you more aware. It makes you have better ability to do things. And I think that's just a wonderful kind of outcome. And I can sit there and occasionally I have a client who might have a couple of money issues. And I sit there and for a little, just for a second, because I'm only human, my kind of niggles that happened years ago, kind of that kind of,
Yes.
But I can just push him to one side and said, right, okay, let's concentrate on him and getting him sorted and how he's going to move forward. And that comes with experience, and realizing that you can't help someone if you're emotionally involved. And one of the reasons I feel that what I do is so powerful, and I would expect, I'll be interested in your view on this. I'm not emotionally involved in the people, the team. I get emotionally involved in my clients, but not in the team. So I can kind of highlight someone in the team who's not the right person in that place at that time.
Yeah.
They can't see for wood for the trees. And I think that makes it very powerful. I can see very, very clearly the systems are not running, what they're doing wrong, their outlook, and all the things that they've got too much whizzing around their head to kind of work that out. So that the fact that I am emotional involvement in their wider space, I think is very powerful.
I spoke to you a few times now. I'll challenge both of us on this. If I say what I think about me, sometimes words make a difference. And you say you're not emotionally involved. I've seen you a couple of times. I think you are a nice guy, actually. I'm going to say about me and see if it makes you think, oh, actually, I do very emotionally involve myself with people around me. But I take emotion out of the decisions. I take emotion out of the conversation, because if I put emotion in, I will make the wrong decision on their behalf, or kind of guide them from the wrong angle. So the people I decide to work with and want to help, I have a real passion about them living their life as best as possible, whilst living in the stress and the chaos of it. But I'm able to stand back and go, no, or yes, because I'm emotionally connected. I stand back and make my decision with no emotion. That's that.
God, you're making me. You're making me think.
A logical decision. But I don't know.
Right, okay, you're making me. Can't ignore everything I said. No.
Yeah, and me. I like the conversation, but
I obviously care. That's why I love the success my clients have. But I don't. Yeah. What I do is I don't make myself care about the kind of wider team to begin with.
Yes.
Okay. Lots of people get me into coach their teams now, and it's something I absolutely adore doing, because I can relate to them. They've been on site, they've been in the muck and bullets like I have.
Nice.
How many coaches, mentors, consultants can come from that background and kind of go and speak to site managers because they've been a site manager, because they've got up in the morning and they've used the old horrible toilets and the dump and jumps and all the kind of the things that we have. And I really enjoy it. And I get emotionally involved in them because they become my clients, in that situation. But at the same time, beginning, I can really see who is just being a yes man, who is, having those kind of roles, who isn't really going to be pushing the business going forward, where the loyalties are and where the barriers are. And I think having run more than one company and having those people working for me, the assassins and the ambassadors, you start to realise that you don't always see them.
No, and as you say, you can't be experienced without experiences. And what's great about you, and I pride myself on this, I've been in retail all my life. So, when I'm invited, I have a lot of keynote speaking events, which I'm really excited about. And I don't go on stage and say, here's the expert, because there's always some best salesman in the company, in the audience, that thinks, the boss has told me to listen to this guy. I just go on and say, look, I've been in sales all my life, so I'm just going to share stuff that's worked for me. And, if you're the best salesperson in this room, listen harder. Because if you've just started working with this company, you're going to learn everything I say, because you don't do it. But if you're the best salesperson in this company, listen harder, because you're going to wait for the one thing, just the one thing that you don't know. But I'm not knocking people that do come out of or do decide to be some sort of coach in their business, but they've read a book. I haven't read a book. I haven't read one book. It's my experience through my retail sales journey. Same, Robin, with you. You're able to be authentic. You're able to associate with your clients. You can understand their challenges because you've been there, seen it, done it. I learn from my clients definitely. But they do learn from us.
Absolutely. And the structure and everything else is really, really important. Well, it's been really good chatting to you, Phill. We could go on. I know we could go on for hours. I think we've already broken the record for the longest podcast that I've done. So, but what I always leave the listeners with, really, apart from saying, please follow my podcast and press that button, and please give us some reviews and some feedback. I do get the occasional text and message from people saying they absolutely love it, and it just makes my world really good. So if you want to do that, please do. But but what we do at the end is we just ask you, and I think I know what the answer is because we've covered most of this. What are the three things, I'm limiting it to three, that you would say to a business owner that they should definitely be doing to avoid failure?
On the spot. Understand your why. I'm writing this down as you've asked this. Understand your why. Don't have a goal to exist. You can't have a goal to, understand your expenses, understand your costs. Those are crucial. You don't have to be an accountant. I'm not personally, I wasn't excited by the financial side of our business. It wasn't mine. I just like the sale, if you like. But really understand your business. Second thing I would say to you is live whilst working. And that may not be anything you expected in the kind of what are the three business tips, but why are we working? To enjoy life as best as possible. Isn't it amazing that people like you and I have worked 15, 16 hours a day in our lifetime, right? To make sure the kids are fed, and all the kids wanted was a cuddle, but never saw us. So we think we're doing all the right things to help and provide when all they wanted was a hug. And the reality is we all know people that have passed away young, middle-aged, whatever. And I would say, ladies and gentlemen, put this in perspective. You've got to make sure that included in the way you work is the way you live. If you have a partner at home, do you go out once a month, just the two of you? And don't use excuses, but. You've always got to say yes if instead of no because. Because on your own, we'll always come up with a no because. I can't because. It's not, I'd like to, but. What about yes if? Remove ever the words no because. Replace it with yes if. So just make sure you have good moments whilst living in the stress. And I would say, make sure you have a life plan and your business plan fits inside that. Not a business plan and your life plan fits inside that.
Well, that sounds very powerful. So I totally agree with you on all 3 points. And I think people do tend to, it's a bit like that. I'll be happy when.
I love that. Yes, it's so true. So true.
And I've stopped myself so many times and gone, hold on, times can be tough, but actually compared to a lot of people, I'm really well off, done really well. I've got a fantastic family, fantastic wife.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's just amazing. Why aren't I happy when this happens or when that happens? And I am. And that just that thought brings me back down to earth and kind of changes my life.
Well, there's a liner I use, surprise, surprise, and we must enjoy the BMW on the way to the Ferrari. Because I was always the type that whatever I kind of next achieved, problem was that was on the right-hand side of the desk. Right, I've done all that today. I'm really pleased, or I've achieved that, or I've got that order. And there was that split second of, oh, great. And then look at the left-hand side of the desk, but my still to-do list. And I didn't enjoy that BMW because I didn't have the Ferrari. Instead of, do you know what? I'm enjoying the BMW on the way to the Ferrari. And, both of us have said this, not on both of our behalves, but if we provoke any of your listeners to get someone into their life just as a monthly sounding board, you will all find you will achieve your success and define your success. So I would encourage people to contact you. I would encourage people to reach out because when you're on your own, every decision's correct.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think, people need to kind of have that sounding board and think about it. So that's great.
Without doubt. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. It's been really interesting.
Me the link and I will put this out on my Facebook. So I hope your audience have benefited from our chat today. But I will say I've loved it. Thank you very much for the privilege.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Bust and Beyond with Robin Hayhurst. Be sure to tune in next time and visit his website at robinhayhurst.com.